Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Tamara Bingham-Noyes. I'm the Director of Business Development here at Center for Change. We had a little glitch in our camera work this morning, so Melissa's actually here in my office. We're going to swap spots here shortly, but that's why I'm in a mask, so I apologize. I can wave and say hi, but otherwise I got to keep my mask on, and then when Melissa takes over, she can take her mask off. I'll be a ways away so that we can stay safe. So thanks for joining us today. We're so happy that you could be with us. I need to do just a couple of quick housekeeping things before we get started, and then I will turn it over to Melissa and she can introduce herself, tell you a little bit about what she does here at Center for Change, and then jump right into the presentation. So, as you can see on your screen, there's some notes that we're going to go over. A copy of the PowerPoint is in the handouts section of your toolbar. So you're more than welcome to take a look at that throughout. You can download it and save it for later as Melissa goes through her presentation, but it is there for you to utilize if you need to. A copy of the post test is in the handout section of the toolbar as well. Please keep in mind that this copy is for reference only. You're welcome to again view it or print it out as Melissa's going through her presentation, but you will not use that form to take the test. It's for reference only. In order to obtain continuing education credit, you must take the online post test, and I'll talk more about that in just a minute. You're welcome to submit questions in the questions section of the toolbar. We'll try to get to a few of those at the end of the webinar. We recognize that at the top of the hour, most of you are clinicians of some sort, and likely you'll have to hop off right at the top of the hour in order to get to clients, etc. So we may go past the top of the hour a little bit with questions. But we'll try and save a couple of minutes at the end to get to some before everybody has to hop off. So feel free to submit those questions, type those questions into the questions section of the toolbar. I will keep an eye on those throughout the webinar, and then at the end, we'll come back and see if we can address a couple of those. When the webinar ends, there will be an evaluation that will pop up automatically once I end the webinar for everyone. If you would take just a minute to complete that evaluation, that would be really helpful to us. That's a continuing education requirement for us on our end. All of the information is collated and tabulated and sent back to the CE entities, but it's completely anonymous. So please feel free to give us honest evaluation feedback. That would be really helpful for us. And then about an hour after the webinar ends, you'll receive a separate email with the link to take the online post test. So don't panic. It doesn't happen immediately after the webinar. It's about an hour or so after. You'll get a separate email with the link to take the online post test. You click on that link, it will take you to the test site, and then you'll take the test there. Once you pass that test, it will automatically download your certificate to your computer. And if you don't see that certificate, sometimes it hides in your downloads file, so take a look for it there. Okay, I am going to, that's all of our information, so let me get out of this and pull up Melissa's and get her going and trade her spots. Okay, I'll turn it over to you, Melissa. No, you're welcome. And you'll probably have to click on your presentation in order for it to advance the first time. Okay.
Hi, my name is Melissa Taylor, and I am the Clinical Services Supervisor at Center for Change. I've been here for 16 years. Thanksgiving was my anniversary. And I oversee all of the clinical programs that we have here at the Center for Change. And I just am delighted to work here and to be surrounded by such a good team. I'm originally from Philadelphia and enjoy pretty much everything about Utah except for the winters that last for 6 months. But if you can get outside and snowshoe and do some things that are fun, it's really a beautiful place. So I became interested in the dualistic model of passion about a couple years ago, and I read some research by Robert Ballerin. And Robert Ballerin is a social psychologist at the University of Quebec. at Montreal. And so most of the research that I'm going to present to you today is actually his life's work. So I want to give credit to him. When I reached out to him to talk about just what I do and my interest in his theory, he really explained to me that this has been researched quite a bit, but never in the clinical setting like I'm doing it today. So all the applications that I am putting into recovery are of my own accord. So I wanted to start off by really defining what passion is according to Valorin and his research. So he defines passion as a strong inclination towards a self-defining activity that's going to be important, that one loves or finds important, and invests a significant amount of time and energy in. In his research, it really formulates around two different kinds of passion. The first can be seen in harmony with other aspects of the self, your life, and mainly this harmonious approach leads to adaptive outcomes. And then the second form of passion may lead to more conflicts with not only yourself, but with others and other goals and aspects you have in your life. And when someone approaches their passions obsessively, there's a less adaptive and sometimes even maladaptive outcomes to that. So the theory dualistic model of passion is really looking at the research between the two forms of passion, harmonious and obsession. What is passion? So this is when I read his research, I thought, okay, this reminds me of my work that I do with eating disorder patients. He describes passion as an activity that one likes, loves, or finds interesting. It's meaningful and or valuable, and you engage in this for about 8 hours during the week. So it does take up some time. It's part of your self-concept. So it's not like, oh my goodness, I love to hike. It's I'm a hiker, or I like to fish. It's I'm a fisherman. It becomes part of who you are. And I think if you take a minute, if I was doing this live in a conference, I would ask you to take 30 seconds and think about some things in your life that are important to you, that you find meaningful. I'm going to go back to that slide. Valuable, that you do invest time in, and that you feel like are really part of your life that you would miss if they weren't there. So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to just think about things. They could be things that maybe are more obsessive or more harmonious. We'll talk about that in a minute, but things that are important to you. So whether it's time spent with your children, that's your passion, or dance, or riding your bike, or artwork, or poetry. So I'm just going to give you a couple seconds here. Tamara was looking at me like, why am I stopped talking? So just a few seconds to write a couple of activities down. So now that you have those activities down, I want to introduce you to the passion scale. And this is where Valorin said, it's been researched a lot, and it really has been researched a ton, this scale. It's been researched in many different types of settings, in scholastic, in work settings, in athletics, and in the arts. So it's a very reliable passion scale. I don't have how to score it because he was adamant about it not being applied to a clinical setting, but I do think it's important. I added it in so that you could see what kind of questions you can ask yourself and your patients as you're looking into recovery. So think about the things that you wrote down on your list. And the key is number 1, 3, 5, 6, 8, and 10 reflect harmonious passion. So those questions are, this activity is in harmony with the other activities of my life. So think of the things you wrote down, and then think of the things that your patients are dealing with as they're going through recovery. And I think that we're going to see that a lot of times in recovery, there's an imbalance between what has been important to them in their eating disorder and in their addiction, and then what's important to them now. Another question is, the new things that I discover with this activity allow me to appreciate it even more. This activity reflects the qualities that I like about myself. This activity allows me to live a variety of experiences. My activity is well integrated, excuse me, is well integrated into my life. And then my activity is in harmony with other things that are part of me. So you can see how there's a balance in these questions, and the word harmonious or harmony really goes along with this. And then the obsessive ones, which I think will really resonate with you as you deal with this clientele, is very telling. I have difficulties controlling my urge to do this activity. I have an almost obsessive feeling for this activity. This activity is the only thing that really turns me on. If I could, I would only do my activity. This activity is so exciting that sometimes I lose control over it. I have the impression that my activity controls me. And so if you really look at those 12 questions, and you ask yourself, does this apply to eating disorder work? I think it really does with the recovery work. And I think that it offers the patients, and maybe you yourself in your own life, a starting point to look at some things that could be important, to look at balance and what to let go of and what to keep. This is a test question, by the way, but I wanted to talk to you about the difference between, people just being exuberant or really determined versus passion. And this comes up in the research. So we have a patient here who every time I see her, she has these little alliterations, right? Like, it's a marvelous Monday, Melissa, and it's a wonderful Wednesday. And I would say she has zest for life. She is passionate at how she approaches things. And that's more of like a personality trait. And then there's people with grit. I would say that a lot of our patients here have grit, meaning that they can tackle life's challenges with perseverance. But zest and grit are not described in a duality sense like passion. Passion is really the synergy between a person, their identity, and the activity. It's a relationship between all of those. It's not a trait of one's personality, although I will explain, to not make it too nebulous or confusing, that personality traits do impact the way you develop passion. So the overall findings of passion are just so exciting for me. When you do your passion in a harmonious way, the research says that there's a better psychological well-being. And I go over these with my patients. I explain what harmonious passion is, what obsessive passion is, and the outcome. Better health. I'll take this slide as I'm thinking of it. There was some research that they did with women who had breast cancer. And when they had breast cancer and they used walking, for example, in a harmonious way versus an obsessively passionate way, they actually were less worried about the cancer reoccurring. Their depression and anxiety symptoms decreased. So there were a lot of benefits to approaching walking, which is a favorite pastime of women sometimes who have breast cancer. That's what the research showed. Using harmonious passion, those same outcomes were not there when women in the same situation were walking with an obsessive approach. Has positive interpersonal relationship outcomes, which I'll talk about further on. Performance and creativity and contributions to society were increased. Obsessive passion was negatively correlated or found to be unconnected with the above. So how do we create passion? So this is where it gets a little bit exciting for me, because passion and identity are, again, symbiotic. So our passions, if we're doing it harmoniously, our passions reflect our identity. And our identity is created, of course, by our social, spiritual, and even our material selves, which is our bodies, which I'm going to talk about later on in the application of this, how we can use it in body image recovery work. But as we go about life and we see what our roles are and our dreams, our beliefs, and our value systems, we become interested in certain things that reflect that. And that's kind of challenging for eating disorder patients, because it's reversed. With obsessive passion, the passion is your identity instead of the identity, being kind of explored through the passion. And so sometimes they don't even know who they are or what's important to them, because their eating disorder is wrapped up in the identity. And so it's very scary when you're asking them to recover from an eating disorder because they don't know who their identity is. And that's pretty common for those of you who work with eating disorder patients. So I think that's something that helps their patients is having family therapy. I'm a huge believer in family therapy, to ask the family to kind of point out to the patient who he or she was, or who they were before the eating disorder existed, to remind them about these things on the slide. In the passion research, Valorant also talks about the way we internalize passion, and I'm going to explain that, really impacts whether it's harmonious or obsessive. So DMP is that dualistic model of passion, looks at the identity, right? That social values, the relationships, the behaviors that I just talked about, and how that gets internalized into the self. So autonomous internalization is correlated with harmonious passion, and controlled internalization is correlated with obsessive passion. And when we come at it from an autonomous internalization process, it's more adaptive, it's more creative, and it's more open. And so, just to clarify, autonomous internalization is the ability to take this passion and freely engage in it, not having anybody force you to do it. I remember when I was, I think I started piano lessons at age 5, and I hope my mother's not listening. She'd make me practice that damn piano all the time, and I hated it. And so I hated the piano because I felt kind of forced to do it, and I quit when I was 12. And now as an adult, I wish that I still had those skills because it's such a beautiful instrument. But I think that sometimes when we feel more free to engage in something or not, that's when it becomes more of our decision. That's more of the autonomous internalization. So also when we are doing the activity, we feel like it's important to us. It's not because it's important to somebody else. And it's done in balance with other life needs, activities, and responsibility. The participant's the one in control, not the family, not the coach, not the therapist. And it can foster growth in many other areas because it's a process that we learn and we apply it to other things. So, of course, this is harmoniously way to recover, right? We want them to recover in this way. And this is something that we can work on with the patient. A controlled internalization process is quite the opposite. It's the passion that calls the shots, not the participant. It's rigid. The patient or the person feels motivated and compelled to do the activity because of interpersonal or intrapersonal reasons. So again, this is like, I'm trying to please someone else. Someone else is making me do this. And the impact of that is that it has, some conflict in relationships, conflict to participate or not to participate in the activity. And people have a difficult time, if they feel compelled to do it, not to do the activity. So when I read his research, I thought, oh my goodness, this is just like my patients when they're really stuck. Just to further this example of how it goes back to recovery, this is from Ira Sacker's book, Regaining Yourself. Most people with eating disorders pick up on the things that get a lot of approval from the outside world, rigidly channeling themselves into activities that look good rather than ones that feel good to them. They learn how to perform so as to get the maximum amount of recognition from others rather than satisfying themselves. So again, these two lines of research haven't crossed, but I think they can cross pretty well. Before I go on further, let me talk to you about how personality traits can impact passion. It can be a factor. So harmonious passion is positively correlated. These are the big 5 personality traits. Dalpy in 2019 wrote this amazing article about it. Conscientiousness. Now this is awesome because our patients are very conscientious. They really care about the things that they do in their life, and it's reflected, in the way they approach things. And so I think it's a wonderful thing that we can use that to our advantage in therapy by asking them to be mindful about the things they consider to be important to them. Some of our patients are extroverted, some of them are not. Most of them like to be agreeable. their eating disorder is not so agreeable sometimes, but I think their personalities are such where they want people to like them. They're not sometimes always open to experience, but again, I'm going to explain how we can, we can adapt and we can become more skilled in some of these areas. And harmonious passion was really not correlated much with neuroticism, which I think our patients have plenty of neuroses when they're in their eating disorder, but hopefully this, is recovered in time. Obsessive passion is negatively correlated with agreeableness, positively correlated with neuroses, and positively correlated with extroversion. So my point in showing the slide is to show that there are places where we can easily come in and use what they have to help them become more harmonious. The research in passion literature also states that sometimes obsessive passion comes out of a need to compensate for unmet needs. And so I think this is really important. We see this in eating disorder recovery work, is that the eating disorder is really trying to meet needs that aren't being met otherwise. And the obsessively passionate person in the research has been found to avoid issues by focusing obsessively on their passion. So again, we can talk in therapy about needs that aren't getting met and what are they doing, activities they're doing, and hopefully activities are for the self, not for others. This part is very exciting for me. Passion is really influenced by the environment. I have a really loving, caring, smart mother, so I feel bad about what I said about the piano, but my parents really did encourage me to develop my whole self, and parents, coaches, I should have said teachers, not teachers. They impact passion, and we can too as treatment providers. So in an environment where people are supported in an autonomous way, which we talked about, it does impact this passion to sort of create itself in a harmonious way. But if parent, coaches, teachers encourage participation in a pressure-filled and controlled way, then they're actually doing the process of more obsessively passionate approach, and then self-development is stunted. So this is, again, a wonderful opportunity to include family, coaches, etc., in your treatment, and talk to them about the importance of laying off with expectations and coming at it from a more supportive and inquisitive point of view. So again, we see that the development of passion is a combination of the environment, the activity, and the person. I just want to say one thing. It was really interesting when I was doing this research, and many of you love probably watching athletic games. About a month ago, I was with a friend. Her son was playing soccer, and they were talking about how this coach, the referee was making bad calls, and he kept making bad calls on how this would influence the game. And of course, it influenced the spectators too, correct? And so it reminded me, I'm such a nerd. I'm like, oh, this reminds me of the passion research. I mean, we're at a child's soccer game. I need to be more harmonious in my friendships. But anyway, what the research found was that when referees approach the game in a harmonious way, when they make a bad call, it doesn't impact their affect, it doesn't impact their mood, and they go on and they don't continue to usually make bad calls. But when some referees are obsessively passionate about the game, if they make a bad call, the research in passion, Valorin's research says they continue to make bad calls, which I thought was really interesting. And we've all seen that happen, right, at games. Plus, the coaches become very, they have maladaptive affect during the game. So I just thought that was interesting. So how do we apply this to eating disorder work and recovery? I used to say you have so many gifts and you're just using this determination, if you will, in the wrong direction. You have all this like energy and insight and you're putting it into your eating disorder. And now that I know passion research, I talk about the passions, like we need to find actually your ability to be passionate, because everybody is passion. It's found to be 85% of people have something that they're passionate about. Most people do. And we need to use the passion in a harmonious way instead of obsessive way, which may actually be a completely different process or a completely different activity, right? And so I just have a different way of discussing it with them now, and they usually go, that makes total sense. Of course, eating disorder patients tend to look at productivity. They tend to look at accomplishments for their feelings and worth, and that is a very obsessive way, and I'll go into the research on that. Rigidity is common, and so are external motivations and rewards. And so we want to move them from that obsessive, passionate way of feeling about worth and move into harmonious passion. We also are their environment for change with the patients and their families. And so again, this is just a review of what I said for your notes, to have the family members and support people be a part of it and encourage them to be intuitive, what feels good for them, not what's going to give them the most accolades or, really boost that self-esteem for the moment. We may have to have them explore other passions, right? This is where experiential therapies are great. Have them try new things that they're afraid to do, things that they may fail at first. And I'm going to talk about ways you can explain the goal process to them that makes more sense. And more helpful probably. And encouraging an autonomous approach to these activities encourages growth and adaptation. That's the goal. We're looking for growth. We're looking to further our life's abilities instead of, am I the best at this? So in the research, flow is really important. And I love this concept of flow. In the therapeutic lingo or jargon, we'd probably call it the process. But flow is what happens while you're doing the passion. So what is the process and how are you feeling and how are you approaching it? With harmonious passion, a person, when they're doing their passion, they're open-minded, right? Oh my gosh, we could change it up. We could do this instead of that. I had a great idea. Less defended, more mindful. And the results are that the concentration is more focused. The flow is set by the participant, right? Nobody else. And it's creative, it's flexible, it's adaptable. And what they find in the research is that this spills into other activities of life. How awesome is that? So for example, let's say you're sitting down to practice the piano and then all of a sudden you think, oh, I'm just gonna practice by coming up with some new arrangements, those kinds of things. And so that actually is a very, open kind of flow. Participants, when they don't engage in the activity for some reason they want to, but something happens in life, they don't feel negatively, they don't feel put out, they just move forward. And that's part of that adaptability. In the outcome, we see that when a participant is engaging in this way, their enjoyment of the task is far more increased than when you're obsessively engaged in a flow process. And they report a positive affect during the task, that creativity and flow and flexibility is there. And again, they don't feel pulled oh, shoot, I don't want to stop, but I have this other thing. No, they feel free to stop and pick up at a later place. And after the task, they actually have higher satisfaction just in doing other things. And the quality of their relationships, which I'm going to talk about in a bit, is improved. The flow or the process, I'm from Philly, so I chose this Philly fan. We're gritty and I guess zestful, sometimes we're known for that. But the flow with obsessive passion is quite different. It's very defensive. And I think when we're kind of working with our patients to try and get them to change and shift, we run into a lot of this. And, a lot of times in DBT, we call this, right, willfulness and willingness. But you can point out when you're trying to help someone in the recovery process, this flow. And if they are defensive, talk to them about that and say, I'm looking to engage with you in a way that doesn't induce shame, but really is inducing some inquisitiveness. They become very sensitive when they're engaging in their passion obsessively. And they avoid other concerns, just hyper focusing on that and the needs of others, and maybe their own needs in other areas. While they're doing the task, they're very worried about how others see them. And sometimes the passion is done at times where it's not wise. In his research, of course, Canada, where he's from, is very cold and has even longer winters than Utah. And he was saying that when people are cyclists, he'll interview them for his research, and those who are engaged in a harmonious way, when it's really icy and unsafe to ride their bikes, they won't do it. But if someone is obsessively passionate, they have this process where they can't be kept from the activity, and injuries sometimes occur. When he looked at ballet dancers, he actually saw that those people who had obsessively passionate in ballet had more acute injuries than harmoniously passionate ballet dancers. And so the chronic injuries didn't change with either obsessive or harmonious approach, but the acute injuries did. If kept from an activity, they can feel really negative and act aggressively towards others. The outcome of that is that, like I said before, the passion becomes a person's identity, not the other way around. And the passion becomes a person's values. And we see this in eating disorder work, where they get very confused at what's important to them versus what's important to the eating disorder. The passion creates the rules, and the participant can't help but to engage. This experience promotes a lot of distress while doing the activity and after the activity. So, for example, they did athletes, and they actually did the fans too, which was really impressive to me. They asked fans, to report how they felt if their team lost. And if their team lost, they got really upset during the game, but it continued on afterwards. And it actually impacted their relationships, which we'll get into. So this was a really interesting activity, and I wanted to include this research study because a lot of times we have our go-tos, right, in the field, like, okay, we want you to do anaerobic activity versus aerobic activity, and we have a list of things that we feel like are really appropriate for them to participate in recovery. And sometimes we don't do enough investigation to see, what their relationship with the activities really are. So he looked at yoga, which should be a very centering and very peaceful sort of a passion. And he asked people who were engaging in yoga, they were of all ages. I think they were like from early adulthood to into their 60s, who did yoga for 8 hours a week, etc. And he gave them some measurements for anxiety and asked them to fill out the passion scale. And what he found was that if you approach yoga in a harmonious way, then of course, when you're doing it, you're feeling you're feeling a release of negative emotions and an increase of positive emotions. But if you approach yoga with an obsessively passionate approach, then your negative emotions increase even while doing yoga. So my point is, it's not the activity, but the approach that someone might take to the activity. So that's something we really need to look at when we ask them for a recovery plan or we're pursuing values and interests. So again, applying this to recovery is being mindful, using DBT skills, asking the patient some really inquisitive questions. Is this activity pleasing to you? Do you even like it? Are you healthy enough for it? Are you externally motivated by it? Is it part of your chosen identity? Are you filling up your battery? And do you feel good while you're doing it? And do you feel good after the activity is over? So a real life example of this is Tony Atkins. He's a PA at the Children's Hospital of California. He works in the neurosurgery department there. I looked up interviews with him. He had 2 older brothers that got into gangs and violence. And to stay out of that, he really developed a passion for music. And then he went into the military and eventually landed as a PA. And he uses his passion to help his patients. So I just want to show you how passion in the workplace, because we're going to talk about that too, is relevant to not only you, but the relationships that you seek in the workplace too. Here we go. Can you guys hear that? Okay, that's just a little small clip of the video. But what I loved about it is that he's bringing some, really flow and creativity to a very difficult and serious situation for him, right? And also his patients. So this brings me to the section of relationships. What we do impacts others and how we do it impacts others. So we can talk about this with our patients as well. So when we do passion activities, we're not usually doing them by ourselves. We're usually doing them with others, sometimes a team or, just with people that we love. And so harmonious, passionate approach can strengthen the quality of those relationships. When we're doing that, our flow, right, is so much more at ease. And so we're fun and we're having fun. The research that Valorant talked about said that, your body language is more open and we touch and we laugh and we actually share more. And so we're sending a signal to other people that it's good to connect. Patients with eating disorders can be self-conscious and often shameful and find it difficult to be vulnerable. They have attachment injuries. They have a hard time trying new things. And so really pushing them in this direction might take some work with attachment theory and other, other approaches. But shame resilience. But I really think that if we talk to them about how this is impacting their relationships, it can be something inspiring for them. Obsessive passion, it makes our focus in relationships very myopic. A lot of times we're talking incessantly about this passion and we just put other people off and we send out vibes that we're stressed out because that's how we're approaching the passion. Okay, so goals, mastery goals. Mastery goals are like, I'm doing this goal because I'm developing my competence. That's usually attached to harmonious passion. And obsessive passion is actually, it can be, the mastery goals are found in there, but also performance avoidance or not looking bad in someone's eyes, and also trying to make yourself look better in comparison to someone else are often ways that people use to approach goals. And so we want to talk to them about that and get them to identify which ways they're trying to approach their goals. 2 more slides on goals. Counterfinal is sacrificing one goal and then gold shielding it, meaning that we are going to really focus on this so we don't fall short. And then all the other goals and passions and other things we have in life kind of suffer. And that's, of course, obsessively passionate approach versus multi-final, which is seeking competence in many different areas, that balance. And harmonious, passionate people are found to engage in this type of goal process. These goals are not competing with each other. And so we want this to be part of our eating disorder recovery goals. And so talking to them about a few different goals they can meet would be important in your treatment plan. So again, encouraging multiple activities. I call it the PIEs. PIEs are physical, intellectual, emotional, social, and spiritual areas of self. And I ask them to start off each day and take about 5 minutes and see what they need physically. Maybe they need rest. Maybe they need touch. Maybe they need, food, obviously. Intellectually, maybe they need a break from their studies. Maybe they're watching too much TV and they have that Netflix brain going on, etc. And so I want them to look at what they're doing and then encourage activities in their recovery that reflect the needs. Remember, we don't want their unmet needs going to the passion. We want them to be met. Using CBT, and attachment research to look at how they get their sense of feeling a sense of self and worth and relationships is important. So I have some thoughts for you as professionals for the patients. Again, this is very comorbid with generalized anxiety disorder, OCD, that rigid approach and others-oriented approach that they have in life, the self-esteem that they get through pleasing others. And so we want to make sure that we are applying the best known practices for those diagnoses, in addition to using the harmonious passion research. I ask my patients to make a list of 3 things, sort of like what I did with you earlier, of activities that are most important to them and that they approach in a harmonious, passionate way. And then I try to use exposure therapy to help with that, to make this more of their focus. And then I ask them to make a list of the 3 most significant obsessively passionate activities that they have. And we work on symptom reduction and the addictive cycle. Another thing that I've done, I teach the relationships groups here, is I have them fill out a questionnaire on different interests, and a lot of them don't really know what their interests are anymore. So it's a time for them to just peruse the list of things that can be of interest to people. It's probably got like 200 different activities on it. And then I ask them to go ahead and work on this with their therapist, and continue to work on this even with the rec therapist. Also, things I've done in an outpatient setting are meeting with an educational counselor, maybe testing for career choices, and then having them formulate time in their recovery plan for mindfulness and meditation to talk about how they can reach these goals. Also, in relationships group, we really need to focus on saying no, teaching communication styles, the relationship skills, and focusing on boundaries, which is all part of like internalization process of either harmonious or, controlled or autonomous. For the body image, I want them to, of course, approach it from our harmonious, passionate approach. So teaching them how to have a relationship with their bodies that's less obsessive, because that's what they do, objectifying the body. So I use a 3D body image approach. Probably a lot of you use the same kind of thing. The first one is I validate that they have a body image perception of what their body looks like, what their body feels like, how they feel about themselves in that body, and dreams and desires for a body that might look or feel different. So we talk about that. Then we talk about, of course, the function of the body and the gratitude and the relationship they have with each body part and what it does for them. Most of them have done some kind of that work before, and they understand that that's part of the relationship that they have with their body image. The third one is I really feel like when you really understand that the body is a vehicle for what your dreams are, what your goals are, what your desires are, then the body, what it looks like, what your perceptions of it become way less important than actually what you want to achieve in your life, and that comes about through your body, right? And so it's more of a spiritual kind of perception and perspective. And if you're religious in nature, you can even add, like, with your higher power, what kind of callings or dreams or pursuits do you feel like are important for you in this life? Why are you here, kind of thing? And how does the body help you through those things? And then, of course, having accountability with your goals and relationships and recovery. Using ACT to help with this harmonious approach to manage the anxiety along the way, because you're going to want to go off into that obsessive flow. So one thing that I thought was really important in the research is that he talked about, let's see if I can move this little icon out of my way. Here we go. Research in the DMP shows that even though we may have learned one way of approaching passion, we can, with maturity and self-development, develop skills to adopt a different way of approaching passion. The DMP theory also states that no person operates on one single approach to passion. Like eating disorder recovery work, we can learn to listen to the recovery-minded voice, or in this case, the harmonious, passionate approach, and help it to grow. So again, in clinical jargon, it's learning how to change the process and control those urges. Some of you may have asked, like, oh, am I just stuck if this is how I do passion? Also, you can change the internalization process. So we can learn how to do it with our support system to become more autonomous, using our values, really focusing on those values. You can pull an ACT here, and then asking if I'm using my values to develop my passions. When I do this, am I feeling creative? Am I balancing my life activities? Like just that whole autonomous way of internalizing passions. It's not advancing. There we go. So another question my patients asked me, I did this for the alumni event a few months ago. They said, is obsessive passion always bad? And it's not, because when you perform an activity, when you are in a basketball team, and even if you're doing it obsessively, you're actually learning basketball skills, right? So your performance and your skills can be enhanced, your knowledge grows, and character can grow. It's just that it's not as positive of outcomes with this. So for you, sometimes research is me search. And for those of us who maybe find a little bit of obsessively passionate approach to ourselves more than we want, I wanted to give us some things that we can use in our lives. So Brooke wrote an article called in the New York Times last year that my friend Lauren sent to me, because we were talking about our career paths. We're probably very similar in our career paths. And we were just talking about this. And the article is The Moral Peril of Meritocracy. And it has nothing to do with Harmonious Passion, but I wanted to include it because I thought it was fascinating. When they do, Brooke was talking about when we start off in our careers, we really have this first mountain to climb, which is trying to find happiness in the career, trying to define ourselves in the career, and also balancing the family and other concerns that we have. But in our career, we're focused on our reputation. We're doing things for ego strengthening, and it becomes old. It becomes tiring because it's sort of that obsessively passionate approach, where the second mountain is joy. And you ask yourself at a certain point in time in your career, is this bringing me happiness? Is this the path I want to go on? And adversity brings you to a point in your life during that career path where you want to honor what you value most. My friend Lauren calls it remembering why you started. And the heart and soul decisions for employment and living your life are really the ones you want to focus on. And sometimes people change career paths altogether, 20, 30 years into it. But the significance in this journey is really the character building approach. And so if you feel like you've been obsessively looking at your career, again, this is a good article for you to read and maybe think about Harmonious Passion as well. The Harmonious Passion research is pretty clear about employers. If an employer is coming at their employees with an autonomous approach, then it really impacts the work environment. So if a employee feels like their boss is harmonious, they have a harmonious relationship with work, then they feel more creative. They feel like their ideas can be shared without ridicule, that no one's going to steal their ideas. And it creates creativity in companies. They actually looked at nurses. I thought this was a really cool study. The nurses all work the same amount of time, right? Their shifts were the same amount of time. And those who were in a harmonious workplace, didn't have quite as much burnout. And if they were more obsessive in the way they approached their work, even though they worked the same amount of time, they were more burnt out. For the employee, the important thing is to really look and see if your work is based on your values. Are you doing more ego strengthening, or are you doing more like values in your work? Are you doing it because it's satisfying, or are you doing it to get that next job promotion and the accolades? Do you know how to achieve your goals at work and achieve your personal goals? Do you have a work-life balance, or do you need to challenge some perfectionism or other emotional work in order to do this differently? I always go long in my presentations, so I'm very excited on the last 3 slides, and I have time left. So when I did this presentation for the patients, I'm late 40s, Karate Kid. I saw it in the movie theater when I was a teenager, and you get all those wonderful built up emotions because the right thing happens in the end. And anyway, I used the Karate Kid as an example in with the alumni. And some of them really hadn't seen this version, but it's the best version. Cobra Kai, right? Johnny is like all about, getting revenge because Daniel stole Allie, and Cobra Kai wants to be the best and look the best. And so the tournament was full of cheating, just like the relationship with Daniel before the tournament was all about. It was just harassment and assaulting. And the result was really, we know the result, right? Johnny lost because his focus was, I think it was obsessively. That's why he lost, right? That fits with my presentation. And Miyagi and Daniel were just trying to react. And really, Mr. Miyagi taught Daniel to we want peace and we want freedom. And we'll participate in this tournament if it means we get that, and then we'll accept whatever outcome of the tournament. Daniel wasn't in it to win. He was really, really scared to go into it. He didn't have the training. And Mr. Miyagi taught him, you train so you don't have to fight. And so the outcome of the tournament, I think, meets the research of this presentation. He won, right? And so I don't mean to sound like disrespectful or not politically correct, but these are just word for word what Mr. Miyagi said. When Daniel was really nervous about the tournament the next day, and he was sitting in that brand new car Mr. Miyagi gave him, and they were talking about the tournament, and Mr. Miyagi was trying to calm him down. He said, you remember lesson on balance? Lesson not for karate only. Lesson for whole life. Whole life have balance and everything be better. Understand? And I tear up because these patients are fighting for their life. And if we can help them in any sort of way, if this helps them to understand that their life will be better by and large by approaching things a little differently and things that reflect their own values and strengths, then they can live a harmoniously recovered life. Any time for questions, I'm up for anything that you might have about my presentation.
So we have a couple questions, Melissa. One I'm not sure that we're going to know the answer to, so you'll have to tell me. So it came about 10 minutes ago, so I don't know if you were speaking about something specific or if this person means it in general about harmonious passion. So hang tight. It's the question says, can you speak to how patients respond to this approach to treatment, as well as any resistance to this model?
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you? Oh, good.
I haven't found any resistance. Actually, I've done it in groups and I've done it presentation just for the patients, and it seems to make a lot of sense to them. The resistance that you may find is really that fear and anxiety about giving up what they find to be very valuable, which is that obsessive approach actually brings a lot of immediate feedback. Someone's happy with them, someone's pleased with them, they were the first, or they did something that can be measured. And so for them to trust the process of that, if you engage in this in a harmonious way for internal peace and for the mastery of the skill and to help with your relationships in general, is a very sort of faith-based approach for them. They get really scared about that. But one of the patients who's been in recovery and she attended the alumni group, she wrote me a personal email after and she said, you know what, thank you so much for bringing something new to the table, because I have heard everything so many times and this brought a better understanding for me about what I'm still doing, like that list, right? And to work on it and to look at it from a different perspective. They've asked for the slides, and so I've gotten a really good feedback result from them.
Okay, thank you. For the PIESS acronym for
Yes.
helping clients review their daily needs, what are the S's?
Yes.
Physical, intellectual, and emotional.
Social and spiritual. And I didn't make that up. When I was in graduate school or something 25 years ago, I had a professor talk to me about that. And I actually do it myself. So if I wake up in the morning and people have different ways of connecting with themselves. So if I'm on like a little bit of a walk, it helps my all the like inundating thoughts kind of go away. And you can do like exercise in a harmonious way, right? Like you can go on a walk and learn a new flower or greet someone that you never met before, trying to get out of the caloric intake or expenditure kind of equation. And I really try to ask myself, okay, like what is it that I need today? And I find that I can't always do all 5, but if I can do 2 or 3 of the 5, again, harmoniously, you don't have to reach all of the goals, but you're in a better place, which is more like, I guess, what ACT is as well.
Thank you. Do you have a tool or approach to helping clients find what their passions are when they are shut down or experiencing depression?
Okay, I wanted to explain that I think a lot of this is some psychoeducation for the contemplation or the pre-contemplation phase of change. And then when you're actually getting into the work and you're asking them to pursue different activities, you really want to wait until you're in the preparation and action phases of change. But a lot of things you can do, like I said, I have a little questionnaire. You can get them online that talk about different interests and having them fill it out. I do it in the relationships group. And a lot of them just sit there and look at it blindly, and they're like, I don't know, my eating disorder's been everything. Another intervention is to really include that family member, because they know they have a lot of feedback to give. Like, before you were in your eating disorder, I just had this conversation last week with a family. Before my daughter is in her eating disorder, she loved to do this. She was always engaged in this. And so you can look at that and see if that was something obsessive or something harmonious, and then pursue those types of activities.
Thank you. The last one relates to the questionnaire, and you said get it online. Do you have any more? We had several questions about what's the questionnaire that you use to survey activity interest.
Oh, I don't have it in front of me right now, but if you want, I can find it and give it to Tamara. Maybe you can email it to the participants.
Is it something we can put on our website? Do we have
I'll have to look and see if it's copywritten or not, but it's just, you can, I don't know if you've ever done some research for groups by looking at what some other people have done. Something that I do is I actually try to look at universities and what they have put out for students. And a lot of times they'll do some questionnaires like this, and they put it on their website. And so I feel like that's more kind of, it's not a professional with who's copywritten. It's just something for the students to look over. So I'll look and see what I have. But yeah, do some searching online that way. Thank you so much for letting me talk to you about this. I hope it made sense to you.
Thank you, Melissa. We're going to trade spots real quick. Thank you, Melissa. That was wonderful. And so we had lots of questions, or in the questions tab, we had lots of comments about how great it was and different and unique information. And it was really wonderful. So thank you. 2 quick things before we let you go. As soon as I stop the webinar, you'll see an evaluation pop up. That's an evaluation of the webinar itself. It also asks if you have interest, specific ideas for topics for future webinars. So if you'll take just a quick minute to fill out that evaluation, that's a continuing education requirement for us. It's completely anonymous. Once all of those evaluations are tabulated, we send that information back to the CE entities. And then lastly, in order to take the test to receive continuing education credit, you must take the test online, and that will come about an hour from now. You'll get a separate email from GoToWebinar thanking you for attending the webinar, and with the link inside that email in order to take the online test. You just click on that link, it'll take you to the test site. You take the test there. Once you pass the test, then a continuing education certificate will automatically be downloaded to your computer. If you don't see it on your screen, look in your downloads file, because oftentimes it's hiding there. So thank you again for joining us today. We hope you can join us again next month. We have some really great webinars coming up in 2021, so we're excited to tell you about those soon. In the meantime, everybody be well. Take care.